So let's get the meeting started. We will, Nancy, thank you for moderating the platform, and we will work to get Board Member Gualiumi added into the meeting while we are just getting started on some of the agenda, if that works.
Perfect.
Okay. So good evening and welcome to the Merrimack School Board special meeting today, Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. If you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes,
I
Pledge
pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the
of the
United
States of America,
and to the
republic for which it
for which
stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I used my husband's grandfather's flag from his funeral. He served in 2 wars, so I hope that was appropriate.
Yeah, excellent.
So on that note, item number 2 is public participation guidelines for tonight's remote meeting. We are, again, fairly pioneering this for a lot of communities. So hopefully what we learned tonight, we can share with our fellow communities throughout the region and the state. We have great collaboration with them, and I think we are one of the early meetings with this new environment. So you have set up on our link. You have a link that went out to the email audience and on our Facebook page to provide public comment. And there's also the public comment at sau26.org email. If you do email public comments to that, you must state your name and address for the record because we still need to record it for our minutes. So we do appreciate everyone's patience, and we definitely appreciate what we will get from you at the end of the meeting. So what we will be doing is at the end of our last agenda item before public comments on agenda items, which is our last agenda item of the evening, we will close public comments so that way we don't we're shutting off the comments at the point where we can no longer receive them because we're in that agenda item. So we'll be taking comments throughout the meeting until that time comes. Then public comments will be shut off, and those will not be included in public minutes because we wouldn't be able to air them. I will also preface that I'll say the night is young, and with that, we may have a lot of public feedback, or we may have a little public feedback. So in preparing for tonight's meeting, our feedback from legal counsel is if it's too much to record on air, you will always be putting it in the minutes. So regardless of whether we air it tonight or not, the public comments will be in the minutes as long as a name and address have been provided with the public comments. If they're manageable amounts of public comments at the end of the meeting where we can realistically go through and read them, I will be glad to do that so that they're aired and broadcasted. And with that, we will have that as an option. But at this point, it will be guaranteed to be in the minutes, and so therefore public record. And as realistically as we can, we will make every appropriate effort to read them into the record tonight. So again, go to the link on our Facebook page, or the Merrimack School District Facebook page, and there's a form you can fill out that will be sent to us at the end of the meeting, and then the public comment at sau26.org will also come to us, and it will come straight to my email address. So thank you for your patience, Merrimack community. Thank you for your patience, board, and thank you again, Merrimack TV and Nancy Rose, our director of technology, who has coordinated this so we can be as transparent and present as possible with our community at this time. So item number 3 is response to school board members' questions regarding impacts of COVID-19 on school district operations. I am going to table that to make that the last agenda item. And I think a lot of what Mark has planned to cover in tonight's meeting will probably cover those questions, but we'll keep that as the last agenda item in the event that questions that were on the board's mind have not been asked yet. So with that, we will go on to item number 4, which is the update on the impact of COVID-19 emergency on school district operations. And I will put it over to our administrators led by Mark McLaughlin.
Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate it. And hello to everybody tonight as well. And I want to share the thanks that you provided, Shannon, to our partners at Merrimack TV and our district team. You know, it matters an awful lot to us tonight that we are as transparent as we can be using our remote tools to have our meeting. And I just want to also thank the school board because you've been very open in telling me that you'll be available to meet when we need to meet. And so tonight's an important night to meet, even though it's not a regularly scheduled meeting. So just by way of introduction and to explain partly why I think it's important to meet tonight, I just want to draw your attention to a few things. And some of this will be familiar to you all, and then some of it I think also will be perhaps just interesting when you see it all collected together. So I want to just remind everybody that we announced school closure as a district on March 13th. Earlier that day, I met with a number of superintendents in the South Central region of New Hampshire, and we realized at that time that the situation was getting such that we really needed to shut down our schools. So we made that decision on March 13th. So did a number of partner districts in the South Central region. On Sunday, March 15th, Governor Sununu announced the closure of all schools in New Hampshire. And then that became effective on March 16th. And so just as a way of sort of historical memory here, on March 16th, all of our schools were closed, and all personnel except administrators and custodians were in place on March 16th. Administrators to plan for the remote learning that was about to start, and custodians to ensure that our schools are safe places for our educators to come in the next day to prepare for remote learning. On March 17th, we were open for teachers to finalize their plans, or not finalize, to develop and finalize and implement their plans, because this all happened on such a quick basis. And on that same day, we gave our teachers the option to work remotely if that's what they chose to do, or to work from home if that's what they chose to do, for any number of very valid reasons. I want to just also point out that the governor's announcement of school closures on March 15th was originally for schools to remain closed only until April 3rd. So our presumption was that that's when schools would start again, regardless of what the health information was at the time. Our operational understanding was that schools would resume again on April 3rd. On March 18th, that represented our first day of remote learning. So just remember that on March 13th was our last day of school. And 5 days later, on March 18th, we had scaled up so that we could begin our remote learning initiative. This is, as you can imagine, a huge mobilization. On that same day, because of the special meeting that the board allowed on the night before, we were able to begin our lunch program, and in a few minutes, Matt's going to talk about that. Also on March 18th, we launched our Chromebook distribution initiative, which Matt will also speak about in just a couple of minutes. On March 23rd became our first week, full week of remote learning, still under the guidance, and this is important, still under the guidance that schools would resume again on April 3rd. So our planning at that time was geared for the possibility of resuming instruction back at our home schools on April 3rd, but also bearing in mind the information we were getting from health authorities that suggested that perhaps that might not be the case. And indeed, a few days later, that week, on March 26th, the governor issued his stay-at-home order, but also delayed the start of school back to May 4th. But he also, and to this day, continued to reiterate the possibility that there could be instruction in the schools. We have elected not to do that, but it was, there remains the possibility that particularly special education students could collaborate with their teachers in the homeschool setting. And that remains true today in terms of sort of official expectations, but we have not elected to do that. The governor's order of moving schools to reopening to May 4th at the earliest changed a lot of dynamics. And it is the reason that we need to meet tonight, because now all of a sudden we've gone from planning through April 3rd to planning for a month. And we're talking about a significant change in the way that we need to deliver our instruction, the way that we need to consider grading and assessment. And remember, this is all happening in real time as we get updates from state authorities and from health authorities and so on. So we thought it was very important tonight not to get ahead of the board about some decisions that we've made and that we need to make. And so again, I'm grateful for the board to allow us this meeting tonight, because next Monday would have just been too late. So the goal tonight is for us to speak primarily about our instructional plans and our assessment plans. And John's going to speak about that in a little bit. And I want to preface this all by reminding everybody that what we're attempting to do tonight is to inform the board about our efforts to maintain good planning moving forward. And if we've learned anything in this experience, it's that things are changing rapidly. And so what we share with you tonight will be drafts, and it's very likely that there will be additional amendments and changes, which we will do our best to communicate. But conceptually, we felt it was important to share that with you all tonight. So before we get to the nuts and bolts of that, I'm going to turn to Matt for just a minute. And if Matt, you could just provide your summary of your experiences to date in keeping our district operations going.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. These, as you know, everybody has mentioned and Mark has mentioned in his messaging, which I think has been quite a good service to the district and has kept everybody informed of what's going on as best as we could. You know, these are challenging times, and challenging times give people the opportunity to rise to the occasion. And everybody that I have come in contact with during this ordeal that we've been going through during this time period has absolutely positively in this district 100% given their all, and they have risen to the occasion. We are ensuring that all our bills are being paid and our payroll is being met for both employees and vendors. We can do that here in the office if we have to, or if we need to move to a remote location, we've already set that up. So if things go to a next step or something more draconian than it is right now, we will be able to do that. So the whole mode of providing payroll doesn't mean that people have to come in to the office to do that. So we are paying employees and vendors, and that's in accordance with the CARES Act. The CARES Act stands for Corona Aid Relief and Economic Security Acts. This bill makes it clear that local LEAs, which is what we are, shall, and this is the wording in the bill, to the greatest extent practical, to continue to pay its employees and contractors during the period we are in. So we are mandated by the federal government to pay our employees and our vendors to the greatest extent practical to continue, on with their payments and their support. Primarily, the goal of that is a couple fold. It's to keep people off of unemployment, so they're not collecting from the state. We're providing their livelihood for them, and to maintain loyal employees. So what we have here is we've been utilizing the bus company, STA. We've been utilizing Caring Hands. Obviously, we've been utilizing our custodians every single day to make sure the buildings are clean and they're disinfected where it's needed the most. But, you know, the items that STA has been doing for us is they've been delivering meals. So we have the meal program that we've provided. They've been delivering those, probably around 100 a day they deliver. Caring Hands is utilized where the big buses can't go, the smaller buses can. So they work together in concert with one another in order to make sure these home deliveries occur. So that's a very important function. And if the order comes through that we are to return to whatever normalcy is and we will have school, we want to make sure that we have drivers ready. We want to make sure that the bus company's ready. We don't want to be caught flat-footed on this. Plus, in addition, as far as paying our employees and vendors as stated in the law, if we don't choose to do this, there's $37 million coming to the state of New Hampshire right now. And that's coming from the federal government. That was announced today by Commissioner Edelblu. And it's going to be apportioned out to those districts who follow the CARES Act, which says we need to keep these people employed. And if we don't, we're going to miss out on the state aid that would be coming our way. I can't tell you how much is going to be coming Merrimack's way out of that $37 million, but I would hate to not do this and then not be eligible for those grant monies or reimbursements or however it's going to be apportioned out because we chose to save $50,000 on a bus contract or something like that. We are, however, working with STA. They are going to be providing us with a fuel credit on the bill because they're not running their diesel buses all the routes that they would normally do. So we'll be getting a fuel credit on that. So they're working on that with us and with their other STA clients. We had a meeting between all the assistant superintendents of business and the business administrators in the South Central region the other day, Goffstown, Bedford, Salem, Londonderry, and we all talked about this, and that was the overriding decision or philosophy that we want to keep these people employed and available, because you never know when you're going to need them, because we never know what the next step is. We're never sure what the next day is going to look like right now. Things can change in an instant, and we've been very, fleet of foot with rolling with the changes and reacting to what's given to us in a measured, non-emergency type, clear and concise manner. We may, look like it's easy, but it's not. This has been very, very challenging. We were talking today, and it's been two weeks since it's felt like 2 months, to be honest with you, with all the new and different things we're doing and the new and different things that we have to take into account with everything that we do. We have provided an average of 195 meal deliveries a day, with around 225 people going through our makeshift drive-through at the front of the high school. We have served thus far 2,550 meals to kids and families who need it. I think as far as that's concerned, that is excellent. That was put together very quickly. I can't say enough about Tom Tussaud, the custodians who set the tents up, the food service people. I mean, those people, they're enjoying their work right now. They come and people are in line and they're celebrating with them. They're so happy to see everybody, and everybody is happy to see them. The first day I was out directing traffic because it was a bit of a melee, and obviously things like that are going to be that way the first day. And I greeted probably every single buddy in line, and they were just really touched at what we were doing, and you could see it in their faces and you could hear it in their voices. So I am exceedingly proud of the food service department and the food service workers for coming through and doing almost 2,600 meals thus far, free of charge for anyone who pulls up. And that's what we've been doing. We've also been working with the schools to deliver instructional materials to everybody's home who can't get to a school. So the other day we delivered 124 instructional packets utilizing STA and Caring Hands out to those who couldn't come to school to pick them up. So we're taking every measure to ensure that these materials get to the people who need them, and the people who need them are everybody, and especially those who can't get here. I mean, you can't just ignore that segment of the population. Maybe it's a one-car household, maybe they're having financial problems, whatever it is, we don't care. If you need a delivery of a packet, you say so, then your name goes on it with a sticker and an address. STA and Caring Hands maps out the routes. They figure it out, 2 buses to the north, 2 buses to the south, and they go and they do the deliveries. And they're exceedingly happy to do so. As far as I want to give kudos to Nancy Rose for pulling a rabbit out of her hat several times on these meetings that we have, and especially the distribution and tracking of the iPads, Chromebooks, and laptops that have been checked out of this district and loaned out to families. Thus far, we have loaned out, and she has loaned out through cooperation with the school principals and the administrative assistants, 813 devices to families who otherwise would not have a device in their homes, or they have a device that perhaps is not up to date enough in order to handle the video conferencing and the distance learning and everything like that. So between the meals, between paying everybody, between keeping our vendors on the payroll per the CARES Act, everything, I don't want to say it's gone smoothly, but it has gone surprisingly well from our standpoint. And I couldn't really be more proud of a district handling the situation in the fashion that it has. You can see it when you talk to people. You can see it when people cross your paths in the parking lot to pick up whatever they need to pick up. And it's just been very heartwarming from my standpoint to see that. So I just really appreciate everybody out there. And I just wish everybody well, and to be patient with us. We may not get it right the first time, but boy, I'll tell you, everybody is trying, and they are trying their absolute best. So basically, if I didn't miss anything, that's...
No, I think you're great, Matt, and I appreciate that. And, Shannon and the board, you're going to hear a lot of thanks tonight as well. And it's just because I think it's appropriate. We cannot do this and not acknowledge the people who are helping this happen, because so anyway, I want to thank Matt because the coordination of the business end of this is no small thing, and the business end of this includes all of the functions that he just described and more that there's not time to describe. So I want to thank Matt. So John has a major part tonight, and before we get to those specific things, we asked John if he could just talk about some of the functions that he's been a part of that sort of lie outside of, or somewhat, somewhat outside of the curriculum and instruction and assessment piece, which is really his job as the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction. So John, maybe you could just provide the board with a little bit of update about those other things.
Thank you. It's very good to see everyone tonight. And for all those listening at home, I'm happy to provide a lot of updates tonight. And I'm going to begin by talking more globally about kind of the impact that this had on really everyone. And it was quick, and it was time to rally and come together as a leadership our leadership team and really take some time to learn how to communicate when we can't be in a room together and we can't bounce off each other and we can't visit each other. It's a very different atmosphere to function under when we live in a collaborative society. So I think that teams in general, and I say teams down to our leadership team, our third grade team, our fourth grade team, our PLTs, our department head teams, all of them had to learn how to video conference and learn to use technology such as we are tonight, as we're learning. And you saw some of the struggles for us to get up and going. Well, that was the same struggle in our first few days we had. But as Matt said, some of these things, welcome Cinda, and some of these things really, I cannot say enough positive about people who just kept trying and learning. So we spent over 70 hours, I calculated, in just leadership meeting time from the beginning of this, when we found out on the 15th of March that, well, we're going to be out for a while, but then we found out last week we'll be out for even longer. We've had to meet and talk and try to plan. And as I present tonight, you'll see some of what came from those plans. But along with us planning and doing just the curriculum and instruction, which is a major part of what has to happen out to almost 4,000 students, there was also things that didn't end. We had to continue with teacher certification and professional development towards that certification. The state has not extended those timelines. So we are still, by the end of this year, need to recertify all of our educators. And that is a task that, again, is hard because we don't have the daily contact with them to help them monitor through that. So we're working on that. That's a big piece. Just the coordination that we'll talk about probably outside curriculum instruction around special education has been a huge undertaking for this district. And I credit Heather and her team of coordinators who have still met daily and continue that. Our language arts coordinators, again, trying to support, put out information, put out training, put out curriculum initiatives to our educators. They are working round the clock to make this happen, and again, communicating together as a team to do that. And I have a lot more to share kind of in our next two sections, but that's really overall big impacts that fall kind of outside just curriculum instruction that I wanted to share. And again, Matt said it, really, I credit this entire town, our parents, our students, our educators together, because it was time to rally and do some things together as a community. And it leaves me in a very proud place to say, we're doing it. We're not perfect by any means. And what I present tonight is not as polished as I like to be. And I'll say it right up front, but it's got some great bones to it, and we're moving forward with it.
So thank you, John. And it's going to be your show again in just a second. But I just think it's important for the board to know that, just because remote learning has happened, so this is just a way to put a fine point on what John just said, we have not been relieved of other responsibilities. And I don't just mean Merrimack, I mean schools in New Hampshire. And one of the important parts of that, again, is the certification piece. So just to provide context for the totality of the operations, I think it was important that you heard that. So Shannon, I will just ask you, we're ready to move on to the other updates that we have tonight, but I don't know if there are any questions that the board would have about the things that we've just shared with you.
I think the easiest way to do this, since we're all on camera, if any board member has a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you. I am seeing none. I appreciate the thorough overview of what we've been doing and how flexible and adaptive you've been. And if questions come up later in the meeting, then we will definitely get back to it. But I think we are on to item number 5, which is information concerning grading and assessment during remote learning as a result of COVID-19. So Mark, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. And in very quick order, I'm going to turn it to John. But I just want to, again, remind everybody that when we had the initial announcement from the governor of school closures 2 days after we announced that we were closing, The original intention was April 3rd. That was our understanding. That was significant, but it wasn't really a game changer in the way that we were going to, deliver curriculum and instruction, and it wasn't necessarily going to be a game changer for grading and assessment. But now that we have been pushed to May 4th, and it may well go past that, as I said earlier, everything changes now. And so we really have to now talk about the decisions that we are required to make now and have made, and want to provide the board with information about it and the community, and to try to lay the groundwork for explanations, and then certainly answer questions that you have. But that context can't be overstated. The governor's announcement changed everything, and it required us to really have to get ahead of things, which is why, again, I'm grateful that the board is elected to meet with us tonight rather than next Monday, even though that's a couple of days not that far away. Still, days matter. I think if we've learned another thing, it's that days matter. So, and I just thanked Matt a minute ago, and I want to thank John right now. I know his job well, and it's not an easy one, and I never could have anticipated doing that job in the middle of a pandemic. And so what John's going to share with you tonight is, again, something that's pretty unprecedented, and I want to thank John for his work with our really fantastic leadership team. So, John, if you're ready, I turn it to you. John, I'm not sure I can see you or hear you.
Okay. Are you all set?
There we go.
Thank you. Couple items that I'm going to talk about now is they overlap some, our next two agenda items. And I just want to be clear, because you're going to say, well, isn't that really more about scheduling? And I'm going to say, yes, it is, because it's hard to have instruction, grading, assessment without the scheduling being involved in that. So if I do go a little bit into scheduling, I will get more into detail on the next agenda item, but I'm just going to reference some of it as we go through, because it does align to what we've asked educators to do. So since we began this new way of instruction, assessment, and grading on March 16th, that was really 2 weeks ago, and I have to say that really that what we've done in 2 weeks, again, as a team to set expectations, monitor alerting, grading, and assessment for all of our educators and all of our students. This is a challenge on a normally school day for us, and even more challenging when we function remotely as a team. We began in this first week by identifying expectations of our educators. And quite frankly, those haven't changed much since we've started this process. We developed in the beginning a brochure for them, and we really, wanted them to be healthy and follow the recommendations out of the CEC and watch out for their own health. And that's real important in this time, that we need them healthy, and we need them to continue their work and to monitor their own health and their own life. So that was really where we started. Then we talked about the responsibilities to the school as a community, and we talked about the responsibilities to our students and our families. Educators were responsible for daily attendance, to report to their administration. Were they remote? Were they in the building? And then what were they doing? We were logging their time at first to find out where we were. Educators had to be available during the regular school day. That was important, and we wanted those hours to make sure they were available. They had to collaborate daily with their colleagues and their teams to meet the needs of all the learners. That included our special educators and our Title I teachers, and any other ESOL needs or any guidance needs. We really wanted them to collaborate and talk together with each other. As I said, this included our PLTs too. In addition, educators continue weekly and daily meetings with the departments and special ed throughout this process, and we mandated that and asked that to happen. Educators continue to utilize remote learning platforms through this, online, such as our Power School Learning, and some of them were analog packets. As you saw, we put out a lot of packets, and Matt mentioned earlier, for those families that couldn't come get them, we delivered them. We had to make sure and check with families around technology. We did that, and we made sure, and we continue to do that. And Nancy and her team continue to push out technology to families that need that. We have to continue an effort that's very important to me and has been over the last 6 years is our social emotional learning of students. And we had to ask the teachers are checking in with kids and the well-being of them, and our counselors are checking in every day. And all of our, as we use the term at the elementary level, our helpers are checking in. Educators need to establish and develop routines predictable for students and for families regarding learning opportunities. This is ever evolving, and I'll say that we are ever evolving those routines. And as communication happens, I'll mention this again more, but as communication happens and always does, if there's questions around what's expected, what the routines are, what has to happen, we ask that parents or students reach out to that educator and ask that question. Educators, again, will continue to communicate daily with families and students. And again, it's not limited to answering emails, making phone calls, video conferencing, and chatting with students. Educators will begin to develop some assessments that we're working on. We're looking at feedback and essential ways to put forth our curriculum. Once we've established all these expectations and these baselines for educators, we had to gain some experience about online learning. We didn't know a lot about it. You know, what could it look like for us? That was a big question. All right. What was the process? What did the materials look like? What were we going to put out? How are we going to get feedback on those materials? And we kept going and doing this. And we are still, again, not very experienced at doing this. We're moving forward with it. We're getting better with it. We're learning as we go along. Along this way, when we were planning for coming back next week, that's when we were supposed to be coming back, lo and behold, we had a new governmental order. And now we are out for a longer period of time. So now we have to start talking about how does that longer term affect our planning and our structures that we have to put forward. So we looked at these current structures. We reflected on the reality where we currently are. So again, our experience with remote learning. Our leadership team continues to work on this and looked at it and said, okay, so for where we are right now, we need to move forward and look at where we are for learning. And our last day that we had students in front of us was March 13th. And then we began to prepare for online learning from March 16th through March 20th. Therefore, as a team, here's one of the major decisions we did make, that we decided that we're going to adjust our third quarter. And our reporting period was supposed to end on April 3rd, but our new date is going to be March 20th for ending that third quarter. This will encompass all the work that was completed when students were present in front of us before we ended. So therefore, March 20th will be the last day of our third quarter. And we'll begin our fourth quarter, which will be a remote learning quarter from that point on. Students will have until April 13th to turn in any work that was assigned to them prior to 3/13. And again, that was the last day students were present. Teachers must notify all the students of that work that they owe them, all that missing work. So after tonight, we talk about this, our plan is to go communicate this out to students and families and educators that that's what their process will be moving forward. They will identify all the work owed, and then they will start to collect work. Teachers will have until April 17th at noontime to finalize those grades and get them into the book between April 17th and April 22nd. We will prepare grades, and then we will communicate with families and anything that's going on or any students that really aren't doing well. Report cards will be accessible on Power School at the high school, middle school, and upper elementary school on April 24th. At the K-4 elementary schools, report cards will be distributed via email on April 24th again. As always, parents may request a hard copy through the guidance office at the high school or in the main offices in all the other schools. As a team, we are also made some decisions on how we will move forward when it comes to assessing and grading in the fourth quarter, in this remote quarter. And I want to talk about, again, this is a work in progress, and I want to state that. This is our best effort as of today where we are 2 weeks into this, and we're moving forward. As we know at the high school, the stakes are higher as learners move through the educational system. So some of our Merrimack High School students are considering 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, while others considering trade schools and military service, or moving on into the workforce. But it's still our responsibility to prepare them and move forward and make sure that for those that grades are important to and assessments are important to, that we move forward and we do this in the right way. We want meaningful learning to continue for these students. And under these circumstances, we're doing our best to make that happen. We're going to look at our coursework and assignment moving forward into the 4th quarter. And we are going to consider regarding how we can instruct, provide feedback, and assess fairly, consistently, and maximizing success for all students. We need to consider the rigor and the reasonableness of all the things we put forward to kids and to students. It will be challenging in the weeks ahead for us as staff and administrators continue to work together in new ways to provide remote learning opportunities that benefit all of our students. So for semester 2, we will not be using, which is semester 2, which is 3rd and 4th quarter, we will not be using competency grading for students. Students will receive their earned grade at that point. Teachers will begin to identify critical components, a max of 4 to 6 critical components for each coursework. Department heads and teachers will be working together so we have consistency across. If we have English 9, all the English 9 will have the same 4 to 6 components that are maximum. We're working on that together as we know. We're going to start working with the department heads on similar assessments with multiple ways to show what they understand. We're going to utilize UDL principles. And let me remind the board and the community that we have 7 UDL teams. Universal Design for Learning is UDL. And what that means is we're going to find different ways to show what you know. Maybe projects, maybe a traditional test, could be a writing assignment. We're working with that. We continue to work with Bill Wilmot, who you all met, and who's our leader from CAST, and his team. And we've had weekly conversations, and he's providing us with an amazing amount of resources, and we're utilizing these resources to help elevate our way we're performing instruction for our students. Students may submit their work in varied ways also, in varied means. This includes photos, video recording with parent permission, audio files, written work. Educators request students submit work through PowerSchool Learning or through email. There may be additional platforms that will become accessible to us in the future as we continue to learn. Every day we learn, and here we're learning Zoom. So as we move forward, we're going to learn new platforms and move us forward. We are expecting students to be honest. We are looking at the honor system. You know, we can't monitor to the level we are in the classroom, but we're expecting them to be ethical and honorable in handling their own work. We will continue to provide some guidelines for etiquette around video. We've started that. We will continue that. We'll talk about conferencing and Zooming and all that thing. And you've seen in the news what's been going on, and we're trying to be ahead of that. And we're trying to create safe environments for us to video conference with each other. That is, again, a continual work daily. Look for communication to come out from the buildings and from the principals about how we're managing video conferencing and adhering to our own policies in district. At the middle school, as high school students and the staff will be doing, they will also be finalizing grades on April 17th, 2020. They will extend, again, their teams will be working. Their teams will be working together again to look at what are the essential skills and standards that will be assessed for every subject at the middle school. When it comes to the UAs in physical education, we'll be using a pass-fail grading point with them, because of the fact is that many of those students in that 3rd quarter didn't meet many times, maybe 5 or 6 times, and kind of really the amount of work that we have and evidence that we have at that point, we want to make sure it's fair. It's pass-fail at that point for them at that grade level. There'll be more additional information from this at the middle school, and I'm sure Mr. Carragher and Mrs. DeMore will be sending out more information around this. At our elementary school, here's where we've been challenged, and we've met now 4 days in a row with the elementary to talk about these things about, okay, when it comes to reporting and grading and assessing in an elementary school, really, that's a challenge. You know, again, on March 20th, their gradings will close. And again, we will consider all the time that they're in front of them. And then we will issue report cards on April 24th to parents. In the fourth care, again, the primary goal of remote learning is to continue to provide students with rigorous learning and opportunities through varied forms of delivery. Students will be offered instruction in all academic areas, social emotional learning, and the unified arts at the elementary school. In doing so, there's a lot of information there that becomes difficult. I'm going to share with you right now a chart, and I'll show you our best thinking to this point, and I'm going to use the term draft again. Mark said it earlier, but I'm going to share something. Okay, I cannot share right now, Nancy. So I'm not going to share, but I'll just talk to it because Nancy has.
I can see if I can allow it, John. Hold on.
Thank you.
It doesn't look like I can. I apologize.
All right, I'm just going to talk to it then, and that's fine. I can certainly move forward. I have it in front of me. Thank you. So we developed a chart, and I can walk us through the chart a little bit. So in the content, as we know in the elementary level, so much of it, and I'm speaking now as a former 12-year administrator in elementary school, and I'll tell you, a lot of it is showing me what you know. A lot of it is listening to a child read. A lot of it is watching a student do a math problem and seeing where their success or errors come along the way. A lot of it is watching social interactions amongst kids and how they get along and how they articulate and their speech patterns and their ability to write and where they're making mistakes along the fact of knowing the structures of language and doing that. So much at our elementary level. The reason for our lower class sizes, the reason why we've advocated for that is because it's that hands-on approach in watching students learn. So can I recreate that, or can I give a false impression that we've recreated that out in our society and that at home that parents have that level of understanding in every household that our educators at the elementary school who've been trained do? No, I can't. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we can. We're going to do our best effort to maintain skills and move students forward the best we can by providing good, enriching materials to them. So along that, in our math, we have the Envisions program. And those lessons are going home. And we have the ability through that to do some assessments. So we can continue to use our Envisions assessments to see where kids are and where they're at and where they're falling off, and offer some extensions or offer some remediation where needed for our students who need that. We have a program called IXL Math, which helps us the ability to be able to look at kids again who may need a little more instruction, a little more dress instruction, a little something in a different way than envisioned. We have things called Extra Max and Prodigy and other platforms that we're using. They're online websites that we're using to help students, again, maintain skills, have good rigorous material, and move forward. In the area of reading, Raz Kids has been around since a long time, since I was in the elementary school, which is a few years back. We started Raz Kids, I'm going to say probably about 2008 or 2009 back in the elementary schools and doing that. And it's an online platform with a lot of great books and a lot of great text, and they're Lexile students' reading level, and they're able to pick them and use them, and they're interactive, and sometimes they read to you and they read for you, and it's a great way of doing it. And again, there's IXL Reading. There's Reading A to Z, another wonderful program. There's Reading Words, Language Live, Scholastic Reading. There has been so many resources that we've pumped towards this. And our goal is to sift and sort and making it meaningful and not overwhelm. And we're working on that. And that's kind of our step as we go forward. We did a chart in every level. I don't have to go through every single assessment that we've done, just saying that is our goal at the elementary, to identify to our families and to our educators, how will we assess? And we're working forward with that chart to do that at this point.
John, can I just pause you for 1 second?
No, and that's where I am, Mark. That's my part on this section, so feel free to jump in.
Yeah, perfect. I thought that was so. So this might be a time where the board is going to, have some questions. But you can see now how important it was for us to present this to you, because we need to provide clarity to our community and our students soon, now that we know that we won't be back on April 3rd. So just a couple of things to just put a fine point on that John was just indicating. So we continue to grapple with the question of balance. When we rolled everything out on March 18th, it certainly was a dump. It was a big mobilization, and at that point thinking, well, maybe it'll just be to April 3rd. We wanted to just give students a lot of work and be able to kind of work them, partner with them to work with it. And now that we are going to be in for a longer haul, and could be longer still, it's going to be really important that we continue to think in terms of proportionality, because right now, with the ability to work 24/7, many of our teachers are doing just that, and they can't. Likewise, our families are, trying to maintain their work-life balance, and trying to do a job that they weren't trained for, which is to be teachers. We're very mindful of that. And so what we're continuing to try to do, and what John was just speaking to, is to provide a little bit more clarity and measured approach to what we're asking of teachers and students. Mindful of, and this is something that John said that I really want to just remind people of, mindful of the importance of rigor. So we are not dialing it in and just giving worksheets. That is not the case. And so the balance there is providing rigorous, meaningful work. In my communications over the last couple of weeks, I've said we're trying to keep students engaged, we're trying to keep them in a routine, and we're trying to prepare them to come back, because we really want them back. And when they're back, we really need them to be ready. And so that's what we're trying to do. However, it is not possible, as John said, to recreate a school environment at home. And so it's forcing us to make some decisions. So you heard John say, let's say at the high school, we've really had to distill our thinking about what's most important for students in their classes, and develop some thinking about some really essential things that are critical to that content area at this time of the year, and to work to provide that. So you've heard me say for years we've talked about understanding by design, which is the distinction between what's really, really essential and what's important and what's kind of sort of nice to know if you can get to it. Well, right now, the COVID-19 experience is forcing us to go right to what's essential, so that we can make sure that our students have what they need to move forward during this period of absence from regular schooling, but in a way that's manageable. And so I just really want to emphasize that has been part and parcel of all the thinking that we've done as a leadership team for these last couple of weeks. So before John and we move on to another part of this, Shannon, I don't know whether you want us to pause for a minute to just answer some questions that the board might have.
So again,
Or maybe you just want us to continue.
well, if the board has any questions at this time, just raise your hand. Seeing no hands, and Brandy's face is back. Hi, Brandy. So on that note, I think you're giving us a very thorough presentation, and so far we have no questions.
Okay, so then, John, I would just ask you to move on then to the part about the instructional schedules.
Thank you, Mark.
Wait, just to pipe in for a second. So we are moving on to item number 6,
sorry.
discussion of instructional schedules through May 4th, 2020, so that those that are at home are following along with the agenda. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Shannon. Thank
John,
you.
it's all yours.
Thank you for that clarification. So we were hoping this would just be a temporary situation. And I think that that's what all of us in everywhere were hoping, but it doesn't appear to be. And we're in this for a little bit of the long haul right now. And the hope to come back in May is a hope. And I think that's what it is. And I'm going to talk about our planning, because we need to plan till then and make decisions till then, but then we have to think about from our instructional calendar and where we're going forward in our schedule, well, what if we have to go longer? And I think that that's been some of our thinking and our planning as we move forward. And I just want to be very upfront about that. And that's kind of where we are. So our short term is now transitioned to more of a new reality of a longer term need to adapt and plan for long term moving forward. Our district will continue to provide continuous learning opportunities for students through remote learning. And a major change now, required by the governor's expectation, they've just come out about remote learning. We are really going to move to a 4-day instructional model. And when I say that, I want to give a little more clarification about what does that mean. Teachers will be given 1 day per week, or allowed a flexible day, a flex day, which is what we're calling it. And that's a day to collaborate and to plan and to work with their group of peers and the other educators to prepare for this as we move forward. Attend meetings as they need to, instruct, talk to other people in their learning environments. Further, it's responsive to parents. We have heard the parent feedback. We've heard that some have multiple students in the home and multiple children in the home, and that we want to make sure that we're not overwhelming, but we're giving, again, rigorous, good curriculum that hits the essential components. And by doing so, we're going to move to a 4-day instructional model. Classroom teachers at the elementary level.
May I just pause, break? I'm sorry. I'm learning this, and I keep talking with my mute on, so I'm sorry. Can I just interrupt briefly? Because this is again really important. Before he continues, I want to make this point. This does not take away from our 180-day requirement, which, by the way, the governor and the commissioner have not changed. They have not waived those requirements. So we are still responsible for 180 days. So this is not a day off. And I just want to be clear about that. What John is describing is a day that teachers will be working differently than providing direct instruction. And for students, this is not a day off. This is a day to catch your breath. This is a day to continue to catch up on work that you've done, and maybe to begin work that you've anticipated. So I'm probably stepping on John's toes here, because I know he was going to say that, but I'm mindful that we just want to, right out of the gate, I want to make sure that those who might be wondering, will this count against the 180 days? It will not. So sorry, John, just wanted to make that point.
No, I appreciate the clarification, because again, it's good that multiple voices are stressing this, because we've had, again, a leadership team of 19 of us meeting and talking about this, and I'm the voice for that tonight. And my scripted words tonight and what I'm putting forth is really a culmination of a lot of meeting and talking to them over the past 2 weeks to really say that, are we on the same page moving forward? And I believe we are. And that's kind of what I'm doing. So Mark, I appreciate the support in that. So I want to talk about kind of the daily schedule. I think it's important about what to expect. So I'm going to talk about the elementary classroom first. At the elementary classroom, we're asking teachers for 30 minutes instruction per subject, 4 days per week. This may have some slight variance based on, of course, the age of the student, you know what I mean, and the developmental abilities of that child. So that's from really pre-K to 6. Teachers will post daily schedules, and we ask them to post them a day or week ahead of time, so it's not coming out that morning. It's a little ahead we're asking them to do. Reading for 30 minutes, writing for 30 minutes, math 30 minutes, social emotional learning for 10 minutes of the day to follow along with our second step program. Science at least twice a week for 30 minutes, social studies twice a week for 30 minutes, and our unified arts, each one of them 30 minutes per week. So that's really where we are at when it comes to schedule. At the secondary level, we continue to utilize Power School Learning as a platform as our primary system of delivery instruction at this point. And I'm going to bring up a thing that yes, is our primary means of instruction, and there's been some feedback from the community about it bogging down and it being sluggish and hard to get a lot of kids online. And we're going to talk a little more about why that flex day and that thing that may help with that. And also, we're not the only district to have issues with Power School Learning being sluggish. All the other platforms out there are having the same issue. And it's just the fact that no one expected that we were going to have online learning in one day. And then we were there. And it kind of just happened. And we're growing on this. And it's got better every week. Mark Merrifield and I and Matt and Mark have been in contact constantly about they're doing more updates this day. Here's where we're going with this. They've been great about their customer service side of it, telling us what it is, as Comcast as all the providers have, as as Nancy's been communicating with everyone, trying to keep us all where we're going and what some of the issues are. So that's continuing. Teachers continue to communicate weekly regarding assignments and deadlines for students at the secondary level. And again, if there's any questions about those assignments or things that they don't understand or difficulty with them, like we would in the normal time when we were in session, please contact that teacher or for those questions. When it comes to again, they will be providing 2 at the secondary level, 30 minutes a day, 4 days per week of dedicated subject area time and core content classes, unified arts, world language, health, and PE. So collaboration / planning day / flex day. All right, it has, we're working on the name, as you can see on that, but it's a work in progress, but that's the essence of what it is. As I mentioned earlier, our leadership team has been working on this and meeting and planning. We continue to work to group to iron out some of the schedule and how we'll look in the details of that. Please look forward to, within the next few days, some communications from the principals coming directly to families and to educators around this, around what those days will look like and more structure to them. I'm going to give you a little overview of what are some of the similarities of really what they are at every level. So I'll tell you that at the secondary level, it's going to be on a Tuesday. That's 8 through 12 will be Tuesdays. And at the elementary level, it'll be Wednesdays. Why the variance in days? Well, I mentioned earlier that we had a lot of families that gave us feedback about the amount of sluggish internet access, the ability to do it, not enough devices, things like that. If we vary the days, we're listening to that feedback and we're trying to say, okay, if there's less of a load on one day, it may help alleviate some of that problem for families. And that's really what our thinking behind the staggered days were. In addition to that, at the high schools, Tuesday is a day that is not a block day. It makes more sense for their collaboration. They're planning on a day that's not a block day. It's less instructional time at that point, and they can do that. So there are some commonalities between these flex days that I want to tell the board about in the community. Students will have time to complete unfinished work on that flex day. That's a number one priority. No new assignments will come or be offered on that day from educators. Students will have the opportunity to remediate any missed work or work that they got feedback on. Paraeducators can still support students through mediation and Zoom and online and phone calls and every other means of communication we have, email. They'll continue that hard work and effort, and they have been working amazingly hard to keep up with their students and talking to their students. Contracted service providers will need to continue to provide their services during that time, and they will continue on those days. Special educators will continue with their IEP meetings and other meetings that they have scheduled in collaboration with educators to make sure we're meeting the needs and curriculum needs of the kids that we can. This will also allow for educators to plan, collaborate essential components that we talked about what are those essential components, what are those key factors Mark talked about. We'll have time to plan for that at the secondary level. And then throughout all the levels, we'll have department meetings, we'll have professional learning teams, we'll have partner teams, we'll have grade level teams, we'll have cross grade level teams. We'll do a lot of our planning. We'll plan for future lessons and for future weeks and future assessments that are needed. And then we'll evaluate student work during that time. So in a nutshell, that's some of the planning and scheduling that we've been working on to this point.
Okay, I will open it up because I think, John, you wrapped on that item, put a little period on it. So on that, I will allow, if you are have any questions of John and what he's presented, please raise your hand. Andy?
Yeah, Mark, you talked earlier about how this 4-day-a-week instruction, 1-day-a-week flex would not count against the 180-day. Does that mean that the governor and the Department of Education are viewing that all 5 days are work days, even though they're only being instructed for the 5, and that the 5th day is the get the work done, get caught up day, so that as far as the student is concerned, it's a full 5-day week?
Yeah, so it's a little hard for me to say, Andy, for sure what the governor and the commissioner would say about this. I think that today the commissioner may have affirmed that they are not necessarily in support of a flex day. And I can only tell you that that certainly, I'm sure they have a good reason for that. However, that is not the position of this school district. We are listening to our families who are telling us pretty loud and clear that they need a break. And again, I want to suggest this is not a break where you're saying you don't have to do anything, students. This is a day where you're given some time to catch up on your work, and then to, if you have the luxury of doing that, to get ahead of the game on work that's to come. This is not a day off for teachers. Teachers are working in every bit the way that John said. As far as the governor's concerned, though, I don't think that he and the commissioner are endorsing such a thing. It's been made very clear that these are work days, and these work days count to the 180.
Was your question answered? Cinda, but before I go to you, Cinda, I'm just going to do a couple of housekeeping items. I am, at this time during the meeting, monitoring the public comments email box. If you sent a public comment, please check back. If you did not provide your name and address for the record, I do need that recorded. So I believe I have 2 right now that do not have an address. One I have a name, not an address. The other I have neither, so they cannot be put in as public records for tonight or for the minutes. So with that, Cinda, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for the indulgence.
I just have a question for Mark and John, and I guess what I really wanted to ask is, what advice do you have for parents that are feeling very overwhelmed? I know many are, including myself. There's a lot to manage with kids, and I know this is what you just described is one way we're trying to help ease the burden on our parents. But for parents that feel overwhelmed and not quite sure what to do, but very concerned about their children, their children's future, and the education that they're going to get, do you have any specific advice that that you could tell our parents how to get the support that they need?
So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to turn to John, because as you know, one of John's many functions in the district prior to his taking this role and now continuing has been working on the social emotional learning component of our children, of our students' experience. My advice is this. I would, as I said in an earlier letter that I sent, so I have 2 sons. One of them is in college and one of them is a junior in high school. And so I am not at the moment juggling multiple situations. I've just got the one who's at home. Well, they're both at home, but one is in school. And I fully recognize what he is experiencing and the impact it's having on him. John is managing 2 students at home as well. What we are having to do is dig deep to find patience with our teachers, with ourselves, and with our students. That's the best advice I can give right now. What tonight, partly the reason that we so wanted to meet with the board tonight was because we wanted our board and our community to know that we really are hearing this. So I want to just reiterate, the first week was a major push out. It was. And it was with the intention at that time that we would be wrapping this up, in 2 days and be back to school on Monday. So now what we're attempting to do, now that we know that we're in it for the longer haul, and frankly, it could be right through beyond May 4th, is to provide clarity about expectations. And I've heard from some families who have said, it's a lot coming in and I can't manage it. I don't blame you. You're not supposed to be teaching right now. You're supposed to be living your life as a parent and a worker, and we're supposed to be doing our jobs as teaching. Well, we are trying to do that, but we can't do it in a traditional way. So there's going to have to be a recognition that we've got our job to do, which is to provide instruction the best we can, and to assess it the best we can, and to try to provide guidance to parents about how they can meet it out in a way that's manageable for them. That is not how any district started, nor is it how we started, but we recognize now that's where we need to be. So what John has expressed tonight is that there'll be more information to come about that very thing. So my advice would be to have patience with yourself. Also to know that we are not in the business of creating panic for our families and our students ever, and least of all now. So when it comes to grading, we are trying to make sure that we have integrity and rigor in the process, and at the same time, we are trying to be sure that we keep people's heads on straight when it comes to all the things that we're dealing with. Schooling is just one of the things that we're dealing with. And so we're trying to meet you there. But if there's a parent or a student out there tonight thinking that this is going to be a black mark on their academic career, we understand deeply how this has affected you. And we are really working hard to be sure that we can combine rigor with a reasonable way to accomplish some limited but important goals so that you can make your way through. And that's going to become clearer in the days ahead. But we didn't want to get ahead of the board too far and start, implementing these things without the board knowing or the community being told, what to anticipate. So other than that, Cinda, I don't know that I have a lot of advice, but I would ask John from the mental health perspective if there's something that you would add.
So Cinda, I'll say that Mark alluded to my work at home as well as here with my two high school students, and then a sophomore in college who is working and not working right now. So it's kind of I understand that from a parent perspective too. And I left here yesterday, and Mark knew it. I ran home for a 5 o'clock Zoom meeting that my son had set up with one of his teachers, because I had to communicate with the teacher about his feeling of being overwhelmed right now with some of what was going on. And I think I'll start there. We'd start with the classroom teacher like we always would. And although we've been forced to be out, it's important that some things stay the same. And that normalcy of, if I'm overwhelmed by work the teacher had, well, I should reach out to that teacher. That has to stay in place. I'm overwhelmed by what all the teachers are giving me, I reach out to all the teachers. And beyond that, our committee for social emotional for system of care and learning supports has been meeting weekly. We have a Friday morning call, and we've been on together and trying to talk about what interventions are in place and how do we mobilize those as much as we can. I know that our school counselors at the high school are continually calling students and talking to them that are feeling that overwhelmness too. So reach out to the guidance counselors too, and reach out to those professionals in our buildings. They're working every day, and they're there to help and support that too.
Cinda, go ahead.
Thank you, John. One thing I just, thank you for that very much. And one thing I might suggest is as that group is meeting, if there's some resources that are appropriate to send out to our parent community and our student community, that we can leverage that amazing group to be able to pull those things together and see if there are some ways that we can provide at least some tools or guidance or resources that might be appropriate.
So I'll continue too, is that Mark did push out some information in one of his things around Lynn Lyons, and Lynn has been everywhere. If you haven't seen Channel 9, she's been on 4 or 5 times right now, and she's been a good resource for this district for a long time, and we've worked with Lynn a lot. She is doing a Facebook Live presentation daily, really around social emotional well-being and how to work with your students at home, and I definitely recommend that. Sarah Finley Kennedy, our elementary social worker, and Dave Borowski have been working, and they have a Power School Learning page. It's up on our site that has an amazing amount of resources that are pushed out for families there, and also to remind the community that on our website in the bottom right-hand corner, there's an icon for our resource and community guide for social emotional well-being. There's a lot of resources in there for families, and we are adding, trying to put it in one place, not to overwhelm people with 9,000 emails. So please go to our website, look at that. The DOE has a whole website on this remote learning, and there is so many good social emotional resources by the Office of Student Wellness that have been also pushed out to that. So those are places that families can go look and really get there. And again, if you can't find them, reach out to the guidance department in each of your buildings. They know where they are. They're involved in these conversations weekly, and they can help you direct towards those.
Thank you. Cindy, are you done?
No, I am done. Thank you very much.
Okay, because I did see Brandy's hand came up, and or Naomi, was yours up, or am I looking at my own finger? Okay, good. Peripheral, sorry. Go ahead, Brandy, it's yours.
So part of the challenge with having multiple students in different buildings has been sort of each building does it a little bit differently, and having consistency within the home as far as, for instance, I have 3. And they're all in different buildings, and the amount of communication varies not only from building to building, but teacher to teacher. And the elementary level has 1 teacher. My JMUS has 2, and then Brennan has more than that, obviously. And so it's a challenge when you're trying to understand exactly where each student is, on top of not understanding the material itself, because it's right in the middle of the quarter. So when Cinda asked, what would you advise for parents? I am pretty confident that I'm not the only mom with multiples that have the same concern of feeling confused about how to best support our child academically, not just from filling in for their teacher to a degree, but really having just my own arms wrapped around the academic criteria that they're going to be assessed on, or exactly what they're learning, what like for the middle school level, certain projects or assignments weigh very differently. So trying to understand all of that, and I'm not, and I wasn't ever part of the day-to-day. So my guess is more parents are feeling similar frustrations with our lack of knowledge surrounding exactly how to best support our children. In that case, other than reaching out to all of the teachers, is there a resource that we could utilize that can help us help them, I guess, from a academic perspective? Because it is challenging. It definitely is. Some of the stuff that the middle school is doing, I haven't done in quite some time. So it's hard to get back into that mode. And I'm trying, but I know that I'm not as well versed as their teacher obviously would be. And my fear, along with many other parents' fears, is that not only will there be regression, but they'll be behind the game moving into the next year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. So again, I'm going to turn to John in a minute, but I just want to address a couple of things. I want to address the last thing that you just said about a concern about regression. And this might be something that I shouldn't say, or it might be something that one would wish I didn't say. But, you know, I'm trying to be real. And I said before, I'm trying to be real. So I've got a son too, and I am worried about regression for him. And I said at a board meeting recently, we have to be real. Nothing about this situation approximates even remotely what we do in a traditional setting. So I'm not going to sit here tonight and tell you that there won't be regression. If I did, that would be completely untrue. So I would only say that then every student in the United States is subject to the same regression. Merrimack is no more or less unique in that concern than anybody else. That's not a way to kind of punt. It's just a fact. And I think we have to embrace that fact. That is one of the many casualties of COVID-19. It just is. But having said that, there are some tools that parents do have access to. I'll just take you to math, for instance. There are family resource pages for Envisions Math that families have access to, or to our middle school math program. And so one thing that we can do is on those school websites, we can publish out for parents who might not know or have that access, we can publish out that information again. That would be resources for families, you know, when in normal times when a student has homework and they need help from mom and dad at night, those resources exist, so we can do that. The other thing that I want to point out is nobody is expecting that it is a parent's job to take the place of a teacher, but in this environment, it's turning out that that's a critical player in all this. And so what we're trying to do, again, tonight, is to say to folks like you, parents like you, that we are trying to, now that we understand that our timeline has extended a month or more, that our responsibility shifts a little bit to maybe providing less, little bit, but more clarity about what is expected and more clarity about the supports and the tools that you can use to provide help. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that there are families who are feeling that, my family and John's and others as well, because that reflects our coming to terms with not only this virus and what is this doing, but what is it doing to our schools? And is this just going to be a couple of days, a couple of weeks? Wait a minute, now it's a month. Maybe May 4th comes and now it's another month. And so that's what I meant. I wasn't trying to be flippant when I said patience, but there really is no other answer right now for each of us other than to recognize the dynamic situation we're in. And our job is to try to make it as manageable for parents as it is. And I recognize that it hasn't been as well as it could be. And we are now trying to, we recognize that challenge and we're trying to meet it. So for now, but we do have some resource pages for many of our content areas, and John and I will work tomorrow with our team to just make sure that whatever those tools are, or can be blasted out in a way again, maybe in my afternoon communication I can include that, or mostly it would be important to come from your schools, and that can happen. So that's the best answer I can provide you right now.
So I'll just jump in. Shannon, can I jump in and continue?
I think we had another question from Cinda.
You want me to?
I just had a comment. The comment that I just wanted to say is that I did get some feedback. Someone from the community had asked me if we had considered seeing if perhaps maybe honor students at the senior level might be interested in mentoring a younger student, middle school age or earlier in high school, to see if there were some peer arrangements that we could work out within the community itself to see if that might help further the learning. So that was just a suggestion. You don't have to answer me, but I just wanted to relay that to you.
Thank you. And I would just say that that's typical of what we're hearing from our community. I mean, we are hearing so many stories of people wanting to reach out and help and support. And so, yeah, thank you, Cinda. We can certainly try to figure that out. Thank you.
John, I think you want.
Did you have a follow-up to Cinda, to Brandy's question?
I'm sorry, I thought you were going on something else. Sorry.
No, I can encompass both of those in this, and to Brandy, I hear you, and I understand that frustration and wanting to do the best, and I'm gonna reiterate, Mark, we can't in 3 weeks now, and finding out last week to Wednesday, so 3 days, recreate the craft of teaching in your home. Can't do it, and I'm not gonna stand up here and say that we can. We can't do it. We have educators that are well versed in this and have done this for many, many years, and this is their craft. They teach. So we have done exactly what's essential. What can we do to maintain skills and essential for our students? That's the mode we're moving into right now, as of Monday. It wasn't where we were 2 weeks ago because we were coming back up until the governor's announcement. So from Monday till now, Wednesday, we've been in a different mode of looking at essential pieces and what we're doing. And I'm going to go back to the classroom teacher because I can offer all the resources in the world to people. And that creates, again, more work for the families and the parents. And that's a concern of mine. So I can offer you a bunch of tutorials and online learning and all these things. Well, you have lives too, and many of you are working from home. As I'm still working and trying to work with my student at home. And to do that is another piece that would burden more. So I think that, again, I'll quote Lean Lyons. She says, use some grace right now. We need grace in our life. And I think that that's really where we are, is saying that it's not going to be perfect. And that's hard. Those that have worked with me for 20 years know that not being perfect is very hard. To say that and put something out that might not be perfect in filed and in the right chart and the right graph and doing that. We don't have that yet. We're moving towards that, and suggestions like Cinda's is wonderful. Those are things we need to build in once we set this structure in place to get us to the next place. Then we can build those in, as we've done in the world of special ed. We've built in slowly. Let's look at the majority of our students and 75% of our students across this district. Let's start learning there. And then we'll move in some interventions along the way that make some sense. Then therapies and then counseling and all these things. We're still in that mode of moving things in. So I think suggestions around tutoring and more online help and all those things, that'll come as we get farther into this. And it may be the long term. We may be doing this for the rest of the year. And that's really going to change. If that is the fact, that'll change. Back to Mark's term about remediation and remedial things. That's going to change the first 6 weeks of school next year. So this all has factors that layer on top of each other that we're continuing to plan about daily to get to.
I just want to say I can't thank you guys enough. This is consistently changing, and in every interaction that I've had personally with all of the teachers, everybody has done as much as they possibly can, and this is not an easy one size fits all. Challenge and solution. It's consistently changing, like on a daily basis. So I appreciate everything that you guys are doing to accommodate all of our students. And considering that there's 4,000 of them, there's a lot that needs to be thought about, analyzed. How does one, the ripple effect of everything that you choose to do for one student can then ripple into, a larger mass of students, and at different grade levels. I only have 3, and I can relate to any parent who says that they're struggling. It is a struggle, but I have 3, not 4,000. So I am very appreciative of all that you guys are doing, and I think that taking a longer approach to this and being prepared for not just May 4th, but beyond is right on point, because who knows, tomorrow could be the day they say, yeah, May 4th was, we tried, but no. So I appreciate all that you guys are doing, and I know it's got to be a lot of consistent change and consistent meetings and problem solving like you guys have probably never done before in a pandemic environment. So thank you again for all that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. So on that note, we have item number 7, which is the review of community/staff survey responses regarding possible suspension of April vacation due to the impacts of COVID-19. And that is the survey that went out Sunday, and I'm going to review the results with you. So for staff, we had 442 respondents. 327 were in favor of suspending April vacation and continuing instruction that week. 115 were in favor of having that vacation week. When it came to parents, we had 326 3,026 respondents. I'm sorry, a very different number. 3,026 respondents, of which 2,489 were in favor of suspending April vacation. 537 opposed to suspending April vacation. So from the staff perspective, 74% were in favor of suspending the vacation, and the parents, it was 82%. So that is what we have for the data. And with that, I think we need to talk about what the board would like to do about that. So the board has, this will be a change in our schedule, and we as a board should take a vote on that. So the first thing I would say is let's talk about, so 7 and 8 are almost the same agenda item. So first of all, with 7, let's review the data and talk about what the feedback means. And then item 8 would be to take action on that agenda item. So are there any questions or comments about the feedback? So I see Naomi.
This is more a question for clarification, both for us and for those who are watching and listening. Could somebody who's within the group who can do this highlight the difference? What is it like being on vacation versus not when one is doing remote learning?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, from a practical perspective, what it would mean is that there would be a suspension of all instruction. There would be a suspension of all learning, school-led learning, and there would be no assessment, and so on and so forth. And from a practical perspective, what that would mean is that we would be going to school until June 22nd, like we are currently planned to do. So whether, in good days, normal days, we'd have April break. And what that means is some people might be home and they might continue to, work on their projects or whatever, but they wouldn't be required to. And teachers might be at home working, but they wouldn't be required to. And we wouldn't get credit for the work that people chose to do on their own because we're out. So in this case, what we've just described to you tonight would continue, and we would get, again, getting credit for days is a significant thing these days. And so that would be the biggest impact of this. That is the biggest impact of this decision.
Are there any other questions regarding the results of the survey? Andy?
Results of the survey. I was going to ask a what if question. So the what if question is, if based on the survey results, if we were to decide to not do the April vacation, do we know what the impact would be in June as to when we would be done with instruction based on what you know today?
The answer would be if we did not have April vacation, then school would, the last day of school this year would be June 15th. So that would be it. And that would be true even if schools remain closed for the rest of the year and remote learning happened right through June 15th. That wouldn't change anything because we would still maintain remote learning. We would get credit for those days. We've spent the day telling you, the evening telling you that what we are trying very hard to do is have those be meaningful days, the best that we can. And so the difference would be June 22nd or June 15th.
Okay, I think Andy was nodding in understanding. And are there any other questions or comments on the survey?
Hey, Shannon, it's Cinda.
Yes.
I just got booted out, so I wondered if you could just repeat those survey numbers.
Absolutely. So it's 82% of parents, or 2,489 in favor of working through April vacation, and 537 opposed. And did you hear the staff numbers? The staff numbers were 327 in favor and 115 opposed. So 74% were in favor of working through April vacation.
So collectively, the school community is in favor of just going through.
Correct.
And not in spring break. Okay, thanks.
82%. Okay, so with that, item number 8 is discussion/decision concerning possible suspension of April vacation due to impacts. So we took information, feedback, and what's between staff and families, what they feel will be best for the school year going forward. And with that, we have to make a decision as a governing body. So at this point, I will make a motion for sake of streamlining that we forego April vacation this year in favor of instruction for that week. Is there a second? Seconded by Brandy. Is there any questions or comments to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, and if you would not mind taking yourselves off of mute for this. All those in favor, and raise your hand as well. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That clarity is really very, very helpful. Either way, the clarity is helpful to our families. So thank you very much for that.
Excellent. Thank you for doing the work and compiling the data. We are back to item number 3. I tabled it because a lot of what was discussed tonight may have covered some of those questions. So with that, I know that some board members had questions that were provided in case we needed to get reference from CDC, State of New Hampshire, Department of Education, Governor's Office. So with that, are there any questions that were not covered tonight that we needed to ask? So, Mark, the only questions I really had, I think, are still outstanding from the state. So the questions, obviously SATs have come and gone for the juniors. I think there's talk about that being over the summer. AP exams, when information comes out on that, my assumption is there will be a push out to those students enrolled in AP courses. So at this point, it's a wait and see, and we just want to let you know that as we get information, it sounds like so will our families who are impacted by those specific areas. And
I have one just update for you.
Great.
So the May 2nd SAT has been canceled.
Wow.
So that's information that I can share with you tonight. The AP, so the College Board, as of tonight, the College Board has not canceled AP exams.
Okay.
So I want to say that again, as of tonight, April 1st, the College Board has not canceled AP exams. However, they are, expressing concerns about, test integrity. If this were to be conducted remotely, that's their issue to resolve. But for students listening tonight, your May 2nd SATs have been canceled, but College Board has not canceled as of now AP exams. And certainly if there's any information that we get that, provides additional updates, then we'll push that out, immediately. I also just want to mention that up until last Thursday, New Hampshire was the only state in the country that had not signed the waiver for state assessments. So I want to just tell you what that meant. So from March 13th, in addition to trying to get our schools up and running remotely, we are also in the window right now for the New Hampshire Sass assessment, right? That window started in March. So in New Hampshire and New Hampshire only, we were the only state facing a need to, some states aren't doing remote learning at all. New Hampshire is not one of those states. But in addition to preparing for a rollout of remote learning, we were also trying to figure out how in heck can we conduct New Hampshire state assessments in the context of students being at home, trying to manage issues of equity. Some students do not have computer access at home. If they have computer access, they don't have, if they have internet access, they don't have computers. It was a question of test equity. It was a question of test integrity. And so you can imagine that, was, I'll just say a bit of a frustration. And gratefully on last Thursday, the commissioner signed the waiver, the last of 50 states to do so, that took that off the table. So there will not be New Hampshire Sass this year. So we won't be reporting on anything this fall because there won't have been anything administered this spring. So those are the updates I have about those assessments.
John, you have your hand up? And Cinda's next.
So I'm going to reiterate what Mark said this time, just one thing, because when we talked about impacts, the team and I collectively, we were planning for somehow to administer Sass up until this week. So you can think about everything piled on and all this different atmosphere and where some people's efforts to work was, it was because our state did not sign the waiver and the only one in the country to do that. So that was a kind of a planning for that never had to be implemented, but we were getting there. And that's kind of one of the things that's been most difficult through this process. And I want to be very clear about it, has been like the continual new information that evolves daily on this.
Thank you, John. Cinda?
Yes, I had some feedback from another parent that I wanted to share as well, as it relates, I think in our situation, to the high school kids that will be getting the letter grade versus the competencies. The feedback that a parent had shared with me was that another school system that they had heard of had something in place for the final quarter, I believe, or semester, that wouldn't allow a student's grade to go down. If they work hard, it could only go up, or something to that effect. And I'm not saying that that's exactly what we should do, but I would like to say, what kind of guardrails can we put on for these kids in the final quarter? I mean, I would hate to see someone's grade completely drop because it's they're incompatible with this entire situation, the stress, the anxiety, the trying to do the remote learning and things like that. And I don't think you have to really answer that for me right now, but I did want to raise that concern, possible suggestion, and also, the consideration that we may need to put around our kids.
So I will just tell you that we've talked about that, as you can imagine, a lot. And I said earlier, and I'll reiterate, this situation is not going to cause us to disadvantaged students. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That's very much appreciated. Thanks.
So there were no other questions not covered this evening. So on that note, we will go on to item number 9, and bear with me. This is public comments on agenda items, and so I'm going from 2 sources. I will first start with the ones that went through the web form, and I know that there's one duplicate, but to go back and forth is going to be an impossibility. So I will just start with the web forms and go over to the emails I received. So first is Kit Cargile. I hope I said that right. For all of you, I hope I say your names right. So Kit Cargile, 9 Kingston Court. Is there any initiative to improve remote learning with additional tools like Microsoft Teams classroom features instead of Power School Learning? The next one is from Terry Clyde from 3 Haste Way. How will district IEPs be coordinated with the out-of-district LEA that are due in April? Brenda Lyons, 55 Walnut Circle. What is happening with SATs for juniors? What is the plan for them to take the test, and how will this impact their college application? Jennifer Marco Longo, 32 East Chamberlain Road. I am unsure how I want to vote for April vacation without knowing if school will resume this year or not. My thoughts are if we go back to campus, then we all need a break that week before. However, if we do not, then I can certainly see justification in ending school early by working through break. And then a 5th was about getting onto the WebEx at the beginning of our meeting. Thank you, Amy Foley, for your patience at 48 Century Way. I believe that everyone got on. On to my emails. So I'm going to the next area. The first is Stu Moncrief at 2 Fields Farms Road. I would like to request that schools provide some actual instruction to students over Zoom or whatever platform is being used. Currently, our child's school is sending a slew of information in task lists home and relying on parents to provide the instruction. This is counter to the term remote instruction that Dr. McLaughlin refers to in his emails. Parents need the help of the school to provide the necessary instruction to the students. A morning and afternoon session, 30 to 45 minutes, should be happening each day. Next, I'm going to skip that one for a second because there was an update to that one. So next we're going to go to Kim Elliott, 78 Jessica Drive. And my only input is about flexible scheduling. For my family, it is really working for my kids to be able to complete work on their own time schedule. I'm not sure if a real-time option is being considered where kids need to be present at certain times. This would be complicated for many families who are sharing devices. I am grateful to the teachers and administration who have been figuring this out and building the plane as we're flying it. I usually don't comment, but to that, if there are additional devices needed, you can contact the district to get Chromebooks so that each child that needs a device can have a device. So just reach out to your school building and they can make arrangements for you to get one for any students that you have in your household that don't have one. The next one is Jessica Perez, 67 Middlesex Road. And we were going back and forth with the address. So can all teachers moving forward please include in their signature, which only takes a single step and won't have to be done every time, which school they're from, the grade level they're teaching, or even which class they're addressing. She's new to Merrimack. I scour the websites, and I'm spending more time trying to figure out who keeps writing me when it isn't the main teacher. I'd rather skip the guessing games and assist my child, so identifying information would be really nice. Also, I'd like to make sure that the links in this random adult asking for my child to Zoom is legit, because Zoom is an adult site as well. So thank you, Jessica. On to, let's see, Shay Hanlon, 10 Owls Court. Please advise if students are allowed to return to school. Will you be providing an option for parents who do not want their children to return just yet, to continue homeschooling remotely for the rest of the school year, or in this case, another month? I have, let's see, the next one is Jennifer Marcolongo. In terms of UA, in terms of UA in elementary, is almost unreasonable to expect this as mandatory. My children are getting through their days and we prioritize everything else. If we had 2 p.m. or whatever it may be, and we're all spent, we are not doing UA. In some cases, the UA plans are not considering the fact that we have so much other things to prioritize. My suggestion is that would be to find a way to combine UA into the regular instruction. For example, writing could include perhaps an additional 15 minutes that considers art or the fact the student is learning the computer and technology much more than they normally would. Daily recess, which my family does, should be considered as PE. In terms of music, perhaps the UA instructor can find unique ways to include this in one of the core subjects. And went on to say, additionally, my kids are doing things like musical theater, yoga, ballet, tap online as well. These could be considered, so perhaps we can have a way to almost have an independent study for folks that are doing these things. Honestly, my kids are in front of the screen enough now, requiring UA screen time, and I know not all UA is requiring that. It's just too much. So thank you, Jennifer. On to James Mcgee, 33 Woodward Road. As parents that are juggling multiple online students simultaneously, we fully endorse a flex day that it would be counted as an on day for students. Families need a flex day to manage multiple online students, Zoom meetings, PSL-based assignments, etc. for students in a single household with a finite number of connected devices. This will be a work day for students, equivalent to any classwork or study day, and it should be counted as a regular school day. Jennifer Greenwood, I think it might be in the subject, hold on. 8 Cottonwood Lane. And what about streamlining how to turn in homework that is not online, SharePoint, OneNote, etc. Bob Bevel, 12 Blair Road, and I'm going to his updated one. So just want to say thank you to everyone making this time successful for all of my children. My only comments are that while I appreciate that each principal, teacher, and group unit are trying their best to provide student support to parents and students in their own way, this really needs a coordination of effort. The sheer volume of email and expectations are overwhelming. We parents are being inundated with emails from the school district. Please don't mistake my complaining as not appreciating the efforts of everyone. It just needs to be coordinated so that we can level set expectations and follow up. I agree with Brandy's comments about the confusion level, and I don't want to leave my comments without offering a possible solution. Can we, in exchange for reducing the amount of daily email communications and increasing the amount of information alternative sources on websites, blogs, PowerSchool, and Power Learning? Thank you. All the best. Bob Bevel. Let's see, Jeff Greenwood. I just want to make sure I don't miss anyone. So bear with me for a moment. Got that one. Kim Elliott, 78 Jessica Drive. Nope, got that one. So again, bear with me because this is very different than what we're used to. And the last is Jenna Hardy, 59 Peasley Road. First, I'd like to thank the school board, administration, and teachers in this district for the impressive job they have in rolling out remote learning in real time over the last few weeks. It has not been without its bumps in the road, but the dedication of the school community in helping students and parents navigate those bumps, teachers creating remote learning lessons and assignments, and monitoring them well has been excellent, highly professional, and truly impressive. My children seem to have barely missed a beat, it seems, and I can hardly believe what our teachers have come up with in such short notice. Even my child who has an IEP is receiving services at home. I have no doubt that teachers who already work far more hours than they are paid for are working even more during this time as they learn how to do their jobs in entirely new and creative ways. With kids at Thorntons Ferry School, the middle school, and the high school, I've just been so impressed, although not at all surprised considering what I know of our town. Secondly, I know you'll be considering the issue of grades during this time, including possibly tonight this meeting. I know that some school districts have gone to pass-fail model for many reasons, and those are very reasonable for K-8. However, when it comes to high school, I think that there may be reasons to think that the pass-fail option is an overly simplistic solution. Whatever grading system we pivot to during this time does need to provide an important safety net for students who may be successful in traditional school, but who, for many reasons in this unprecedented situation, will inevitably struggle to learn and perform in this new learning environment. That is absolutely real and must be taken into consideration. However, at the same time, we need to consider not removing the motivation for students who may not have those challenges or who rather have discovered that they thrive in this more flexible learning environment. In a pass-fail situation, there is no motivation for a student to put forth more than minimum effort. For students in honors classes who like the challenge and reward of working for good grades, this will certainly be a demotivating factor. it will also be demotivating for students who want to do well, but want to do a minimum amount of work. In addition, I feel this will do huge disservice or back on the pass-fail for students, particularly in their junior, senior years, and I think we're not doing it. So I did get an email pop up saying that I don't have to go through everything. So I'm gonna just get through that because I think that we already covered it. And thank you for all of your hard work in thinking through these complex issues in such an unprecedented situation. Again, your hard work and creativity as we move forward are so very appreciated. I got an email from Rick Morgan, 18 Clinton Court. When will be the last day for seniors? Thanks for all everyone is doing. I don't know, do we have a last day for seniors that we could actually answer at this point under these circumstances?
Well, that's going to change now that the board, am I on mute? That's going to change now that the board has taken its action tonight. So I can talk to Mrs. Putney and she can provide that information tomorrow.
Thank you. And then I have Robbie Reisman. I know he's on the ballot this year, so we do have his address on record because he's running for budget committee. So hi, my concerns regarding the cancellation of April vacation are as follows. We, like some other parents, have no childcare arrangements for the week of July 15th. I think it's June 15th. So we're gonna go with June 15th. And two, I think the kids will need a break before the end of the year. So if we can just get from the school district clerk the address for Robbie Reisman, we will be set there. And I believe I have one more that came in from the form, and I'm going to open that now, and bear with me. And that is Susan Goslin from 37 Burt Street. With the shorter third quarter, will Q4 carry more weight in grades? Having a senior who will now have a failing grade for Q3, Q4 will be an uphill battle, hoping he can still graduate. And I think I got them all. So thank you for those who wrote in, and great questions, great comments, and we appreciate your flexibility. Cinda?
I know in public comments we don't usually address them, but there's quite a few questions there from people that are looking for answers. So I don't know if we can take those questions, take those back, and not necessarily put people's names or whatever on it, but I'm sure if someone has those questions, other people do, and
Sure.
make sure that we're getting answers out on our, maybe on our COVID-19 page or in some way on our website that folks can get the answers they're seeking.
I think that would be great. And I will connect with Nancy Rose, who is moderating this while she's doing all these other great things. So thank you again, Nancy, for your hard work tonight. And I'm sure we can get that compiled over, and that way the district will have it. We'll have it anyway for public comment and for being read into the record. But I think that we can absolutely look at maybe getting an FAQ page out in the next couple of days based upon the testimony we had tonight.
Yes.
Great. Brandy. People keep moving around, so bear with me.
So one question that I would like to add to the FAQ section is relative to seniors. I don't have one, so I don't know if the high school is sending out information specific to seniors and how this might look for seniors, but I'm assuming that there's a lot of questions relative to what this will look like moving forward, especially if we move past the May 4th date. So again, I don't know if we already are sending out communications relative to this, but I'm sure there's got to be a ton of questions surrounding it. So if we can include, to the best of our ability, answering some general questions regarding graduation and things of that nature, when it becomes clear, that would be helpful.
Shannon, can I just say one thing about that?
Sure.
We will add it to the FAQs, particularly, as we get more information that's, reliable. But, I do really want to speak to the seniors tonight because, I feel terrible. I feel terrible for everybody, but I really feel terrible for the seniors. You wait your whole life for this, and you try to spin things, but it's hard to spin this one. And what I would just say is that part of the reason that we have not said anything about graduation is, well, as a practical matter, we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. So I certainly don't know what June is going to look like. And I am reluctant to, ask Mrs. Putney right now to make a final decision because I am holding out a lot of hope that we can actually pull that off. But having said that, and that's maybe how I would close tonight, we're going to have obviously other board meetings during this time. And one thing that I would just remind the community is that we're going to have some big decisions to make, as a community. I, am perfectly prepared to make decisions, but I also want to say that there are some things that we really need the community on. So here's just one. I'll forecast. If the governor were to lift an order saying that schools can be back in session after May 4th, we have to decide whether we're good with that. We've been through and are continuing to go through nothing short of a trauma here. And so we have to really talk as a community, not now, but I'm trying to forecast, as I know the board is, some of the things that we're going to have to really think about. That's one. How can we try as a community to honor our seniors if we're not able, because of safety reasons only? That would be the only reason that we wouldn't have a graduation. How can we as a community honor our seniors for their 12 years of work? I don't sit here tonight knowing the answer to that question, but I want to say that we all need to kind of work together to figure that out. And the more creative we get, the better. But those kids deserve something. And the sad part of this is that we can't say tonight what that something could be. And there'll be, ample time to talk about it. But anyway, I just want to put that on the table as something that, I can sit here in this office and decide that, and then get the board's, obviously the board would decide it, but I mean, I could weigh in. But really, I feel like this is something so unprecedented that, it's going to take a lot of hands to figure this one out. So seniors, we got your back. We're trying our best, and we'll continue to figure it out the best we can.
Thanks for that, Mark. I actually have a senior, but I've been patient, so.
Yeah.
Not him, but I have.
Yeah.
So thank you. And on that, we actually have concluded the business of the evening. So I will entertain a motion if there's no other comments or questions. Looking out there for hands to adjourn. So I will make the motion to adjourn, and there's a second from Andy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? The motion carries 500. Thank you and good night.